Never worked in a restaurant per se. Restaurant people work way too hard for me. When I go out for a meal and I see those restaurant people working so hard, I get fatigued. And I go home and take a nap. How many in retail? Retail and restaurants. My first job was in retail. I was a stock clerk at Pick and Save in Jacksonville, Florida, June 1977, at the princely sum of $2.30 an hour. I hated that job, but I learned a lot of lessons. The first lesson that I learned at that job is there comes a time when it's time to grow up. I reported for duty to Robert, the head stock clerk, the big cheese. What's your name? I'm Tommy Blake. He looked at me with utter contempt. If looks could kill, I would be a dead man. I would not be standing here today. He sized me up. No, you're Tom Blake from now on. Okay, I'm Tom Blake from now on. That was a great lesson because it was time for me to grow up from Tommy Blake to Tom Blake. And as you know, I'm now Thomas Blake. That's a whole other story. It was a great lesson from my first job. Time for change, time to grow up. The second lesson I learned from my first job is you can't just quit. So my first lesson was imposed on me by Robert. The second lesson was imposed on me by my stepdad. Because on day 2, I went to the family and said, I'm quitting Pick and Save. And my stepdad, in his wisdom and experience, said, oh no, you're not. You can't quit until you find another job. Obviously, he didn't understand what I was going through. So I had to explain. Dear stepdad, last week was graduation, pomp and circumstance, and I was being honored. This week I'm a stock clerk at Pick and Save. Stocking shelves, helping people. Not my style. Putting the little stickers on goods, because that was before barcodes. I never worked in a restaurant, but Pick and Save number 2 had a lunch counter. Somebody had to mop the floor. Who do you think Robert assigned that task to? That went to me. Mopping the floor was bad enough. But after a day of making French fries and hamburgers and onion rings and other such stuff that I'm not sure you would really call food, there was a big bucket of grease that had to be recycled. That's what I'm thinking. And once it had cooled down, my job was to take that big bucket of grease out to the recycling area. Now, how they recycled this stuff, I had no idea. I hope it was not for human consumption. But it had to be recycled. So I'm telling my stepdad this, trying to get him to understand how terrible this job was and how I just had to quit. And his response was, you can't quit until you find another job. So my attempt at educating him had failed. So I threw up my hand and said, well, I suppose I'm going to be at Pick and Save for a while, but I really did pursue looking for another job. However, earlier in the year, I had applied for a summer internship with the federal government. But my stepdad, who truly was not a nice guy, would never win Mr. Congeniality Award, but he did have a lot of wisdom and experience, and he was a civil servant retiree. He said, hey, you need to get a job with the federal government. I applied, nothing happened. But in week 3 of my torture at Pick and Save, I got a call from heaven. It was really from Doris Wilson. She's the records manager with the United States Army Corps of Engineers in Jacksonville. She said, you need to come in for a typing test. And I'd actually taught myself to type the summer before, because I knew I had a term paper due that had to be typed. So here I was in my typing test, 3 weeks into torture, banging on an IBM Selectric. And I aced it, so I got the job. I went from the princely sum of $2.30 an hour to $2.99 an hour in an office.
Nice.
The third lesson I learned was pursue your dreams. My dream was to be a CPA. I've recently discovered that being a CPA is quite boring. I didn't know any better, so I wanted to be a CPA. Doris Wilson would take me to lunch every couple of weeks to the tallest building in Jacksonville, to the cafeteria. And one day, after lunch, she said, let's go up the elevator. So we went up the elevator to one of the higher floors, and we went to the lobby of one of the big 8 accounting firms. And she said, Tommy, she said, you're going to be here one day. So it was inspiring that somebody had that vision for me. Within 5 years of Pick and Save, I had a bachelor's degree, I passed the CPA exam, and I had an MBA. Within 5 years. So I pursued my dream. Some of it was imposed upon me, others inspired me. And when I have a tough time now, I still remember that. Grow up, have the vision, and don't quit.